The film The Magnificent Seven, 1960, is not only one of the greatest Western masterpieces, but also a launchpad for a legendary cast including Steve McQueen, Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson, and more. But behind the revolvers and the Western limelight, a painful tragedy unfolded. Most of the shining stars of this film faced a harsh fate death from cancer at too young an age, silent personal struggles, and sudden departures. Today, we will turn the pages of their real lives exploring the horrifying personal tragedies that consumed these heroes. Steve McQueen as Vin Tanner, the King of Cool. Steve McQueen, whose birth name was Terrence. Stephen McQueen was born on March 24, 1930, in Beech Grove, Indiana, USA. He took on the role of Vin Tanner at age 30, the group's secondary gunslinger. Vin Tanner was charming, sarcastic, and often subtly contrasted the authority of Yul Brynner. Steve McQueen's career is a turbulent fairy tale. He was the king of cool of Hollywood, a symbol of rebellion, speed, and masculinity. However, behind the spotlight was a tumultuous past, a violent, abandoned childhood, and a constantly simmering discontent. His biggest tragedy was his continuous search for authenticity and loyalty, only to be frequently betrayed and forced to cope with the pressure of maintaining his rebel hero image. The most brutal tragedy struck while he was at the height of his career. McQueen was diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare and extremely aggressive form of lung cancer. This was a cruel end for a man famous for his free-spirited lifestyle, love of speed, and pursuit of adventure. Although he bravely sought various treatments worldwide, including controversial experimental therapies, the disease proved too powerful. Steve McQueen passed away on November 7, 1980, at the young age of 50. The cause of death was mesothelioma, often attributed to asbestos exposure during his time in the Marine Corps or through fireproof racing gear. His untimely death shocked the world, robbing Hollywood of one of its greatest talents. McQueen's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $30 million USD, a significant fortune, but rendered meaningless in the face of illness. Yul Brynner as Chris Adams, the authoritative leader ravaged by cancer. Yul Brynner, whose birth name was Yuli Borisovich Brynner, was born on July 11, 1920, in Vladivostok, Russia, Far Eastern Territory. He took on the role of leader Chris Adams at age 40. Chris was the soul of the group, a calm, authoritative gunslinger capable of uniting lone men. Brynner was beloved for his powerful presence, his famous shaved head, and his unmistakable presence on screen, making him a global icon of stoic masculinity. Yul Brynner's career was a brilliant journey from the Broadway stage, The King and I, to Hollywood. However, his personal life faced a series of complex relationships. He was married 4 times and divorced 3 times. The stress of family life, coupled with the need to maintain a grueling work schedule on stage and screen, placed a great psychological burden on the artist. His biggest tragedy was his heavy smoking addiction for decades. It was this very addiction that led to the final devastating tragedy. In 1983, while at the peak of his return to The King and I on stage, Yul Brynner was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had to undergo surgery to remove part of a lung, but the disease had spread. In his final 2 years, despite his severely ravaged body and affected voice, he persistently performed on stage, demonstrating the iron will of an artist who never surrendered. Yul Brynner passed away on October 10, 1985, at the age of 65 in New York. The cause of death was lung cancer. Before his death, he filmed a short public service announcement in which he looked directly into the camera and said, "Now that I'm gone, the message I want to convey is, don't smoke. Whatever you do, just don't smoke." This message, aired after his passing, became a touching legacy of turning personal tragedy into a powerful warning for the next generation. Brynner's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $10 million USD, a modest figure compared to his global influence. Charles Bronson as Bernardo O'Reilly, the working star without health. Charles Bronson, whose birth name was Charles Dennis Buchinski, was born on November 3, 1921, in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, USA. He took on the role of Bernardo O'Reilly at age 39. Bernardo was a half-Mexican, half-Irish gunslinger who initially joined for money, but ultimately sacrificed himself to protect the children. Bronson, with his rugged, stoic face, conveyed a rare warmth and emotional depth to the character. Bronson's career was a long journey from the poor working class to the pinnacle of Hollywood. His personal tragedy was enduring an extremely difficult childhood in a coal mining family with 14 siblings. Poverty and hardship deeply ingrained themselves into his character and cinematic image. Despite achieving global fame, he maintained a reserved, even aloof personality, a legacy of his past. The biggest tragedy in his life was the loss of his beloved wife actress Jill Ireland in 1990 after a long battle with breast cancer. Her passing devastated Bronson completely. A few years later, his own health began to decline. He suffered from Alzheimer's disease, gradually losing his ability to act and his cognitive awareness. Ironically, the star, famous for his coolness and quiet strength, had to spend his final years in a state where he could no longer control his mind. Charles Bronson passed away on August 30th, 2003, at the age of 81. The cause of death was determined to be pneumonia following a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about 65 million USD, a significant fortune accumulated from his famous late-career action roles. James Coburn as Britt, the crippling arthritis that ravaged the body. James Coburn, born on August 30th, 1928 in Laurel, Nebraska, USA. He brought perfection to the character of Britt in The Magnificent Seven at the age of 32. Britt is remembered as the fastest gunslinger, a skilled knife thrower who maintained a terrifying calmness, almost apathy, and was one of the most mysterious members of the group. Coburn, with his wide smile and relaxed demeanor, became an icon of natural cool, propelling him to international stardom. Coburn's career was brilliant and long-lasting. He became an action star in the 60s and 70s, known for his acting versatility. However, his life was a painful personal battle completely opposed to his strong on-screen image. In the late 70s, he began to suffer from severe rheumatoid arthritis. This was a devastating tragedy, especially for an action star. The illness severely ravaged his body, causing excruciating pain and deforming his joints. At one point, he could barely move or do anything for himself, being nearly crippled. He had to live in solitude and pain for many years, accepting a disrupted career. James Coburn once revealed that the pain was so intense at times that he considered suicide. After years of experimenting with alternative treatments, including therapies from Mexico and nutritional techniques, he gradually gained control of his illness and returned to the screen in the late 90s, culminating in an Oscar for Affliction, 1998. James Coburn passed away on November 18, 2002, at the age of 74. The cause of death was a sudden heart attack at his home. He died just as he had regained the spotlight. Coburn's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about 10 million USD. This figure is considered modest, partly due to the massive medical expenses and the long career interruption caused by the debilitating illness. Robert Vaughn as Lee. The sudden death. Due to leukemia. Robert Vaughn, born on November 22, 1932 in New York City, New York, USA. When he joined the Magnificent Seven at age 28, he brought a complex character in Lee, a gunslinger constantly haunted by fear and his past. Vaughn, with his elegant demeanor and distinctive voice, later became a spy icon with the role of Napoleon Solo in the series The Man from UN SEAL. Unlike many of his co-stars, whose lives were full of turmoil, Vaughn was known as a stable artist and a serious scholar. He was the only one in the main cast with a PhD in communications. However, his personal tragedy was living under constant stress to balance his decades-long career and maintaining his privacy. He was always secretive about his relationships and political views, avoiding the typical scandals of Hollywood, creating an invisible barrier between him and the public. The greatest tragedy struck in his old age. Robert Vaughn had been battling leukemia for some time, but he kept this information private. The illness did not stop him from working. He continued acting until his final months. It was his passing that caused the real shock, as the public was completely unaware of this silent health battle. He died quickly after only recently publicizing his illness, demonstrating his tight control over his private life until the very end. Robert Vaughn passed away on November 11, 2016 at the age of 83 in Ridgefield, Connecticut. The cause of death was announced as acute leukemia. His passing concluded a 6-decade-long television and film career. Vaughn's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $10 million USD, a stable fortune accumulated from numerous roles in famous series and films. Eli Wallach as Calvera. The villain's late-life loss and pain. Eli Wallach, born on December 7, 1915 in Brooklyn, New York, USA. When he portrayed Calvera, the ruthless yet witty and philosophical bandit leader, he was 45 years old. Calvera is a beloved villain demonstrating Wallach's versatile and rich acting ability. He was a veteran stage actor and later became one of Hollywood's greatest co-stars. In stark contrast to most of his castmates in The Magnificent Seven, Eli Wallach's tragedy was not an early death or a debilitating illness but the pain of loss in old age. He had a happy marriage lasting over 6 decades with actress Anne Jackson. However, they faced the tragedy of losing a child when their first daughter passed away, although he always kept his personal life private. This loss left a deep wound. Additionally, in his old age, Wallach struggled with typical ailments, including significant vision loss. For a talented stage actor to face the risk of not being able to see the stage or the camera was a private tragedy. Nevertheless, Eli Wallach was a fighter. He continued to act and write until he was nearly 100 years old, becoming the longest-lived among the main cast members. He demonstrated incredible resilience, refusing to retire and receiving an honorary Academy Award in 2010. Eli Wallach passed away on June 24, 2014 at the age of 98 in New York City. The cause of death was natural causes, old age. He died surrounded by his family. Wallach's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $7 million USD. This figure reflects a long and successful career, although he focused on stage and art house cinema rather than high-paying blockbusters. Horst Buchholz as Chico. The European star's mysterious death. Horst Buchholz, born on December 4, 1933 in Berlin, Germany. He was the youngest member of the Magnificent Seven when he took on the role of Chico at age 27. Chico was the young, passionate villager determined to fight, and the only non-American member of the Seven. Buchholz, with his romantic looks and vibrant personality, was dubbed the European James Dean, a rising international star. Despite a promising international career, Buchholz's life was riddled with solitude and internal struggle. He faced intense pressure to maintain his star image. His biggest tragedy was the conflict between his public image and his private self. He was married to actress Miriam Brew, but later publicly acknowledged that he was bisexual. Having to hide or struggle with his sexual orientation in a traditional industry at the time was a tremendous psychological burden. He lived with prolonged internal tension and conflict. Buchholz's final years were covered by silence and mysterious health issues. After undergoing surgery for a broken ankle, he was admitted to a hospital in Berlin for treatment. However, the illness leading to his death remains a public mystery, only announced as acute pneumonia following that surgery, causing much speculation about the real cause. Horst Buchholz passed away on March 3, 2003 at the age of 69. The official cause of death was announced as pneumonia due to complications from a previous surgery. Buchholz's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $5 million USD. This figure reflects an unstable career after the initial boom of the early 60s and his battle with many personal issues. Dexter as Harry Luck, the greedy gunslinger with a fading career. Dexter, whose birth name was Milos Dexon, was born on April 9, 1917 in Goldfield, Nevada, USA. When he joined the Magnificent Seven, he was 43 years old and portrayed Harry Luck, a gunslinger solely concerned with finding gold and profit. Harry was the most pessimistic and skeptical of the group. Dexter brought greed and calculation to the character and was the first member to express the group's disillusionment. Unlike his co-stars, Dexter's career never reached the peak of fame. After the Magnificent Seven, he primarily took supporting roles and is less remembered. The biggest tragedy in his career was being constantly overshadowed by more talented and dazzling co-stars like Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson. He struggled throughout his career to find a breakthrough role, a battle with Hollywood's unfairness, where he was always considered a second-tier actor. However, Brad Dexter is best remembered for a real-life heroic moment. He saved Frank Sinatra from drowning during a vacation. Even so, this heroic story was not enough to revive his career. In his later years, Dexter's health gradually declined. He faced health issues related to his lungs and respiratory system. Brad Dexter passed away on December 12, 2002, at the age of 85. The cause of death was determined to be complications from emphysema, a chronic lung disease. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects an unstable career lacking high-paying lead roles, but he lived a long and peaceful life. Robert J. Wilke as Wallace. The familiar villain face. Robert J. Wilke, born on May 18, 1914, in Cincinnati, Ohio, USA, when he appeared as the guest role of Wallace in The Magnificent Seven. He was 46 years old. Wallace was one of Calvera's bandits. Wilke was known as one of Hollywood's most reliable and familiar villain faces, frequently appearing in Western films bringing a silent threat. Robert J. Wilke's career was a long series of supporting but extremely noticeable roles, often as the bad guy or the villain's henchman. His personal tragedy was being typecast as the heavy for his entire life. Despite being a talented and hard-working actor, he never escaped Hollywood's prejudice to receive deeper leading roles. He is a symbol of the silently devoted artist who never enjoyed A-list star glory. Like many of his co-stars in this film, Robert J. Wilke's biggest tragedy was cancer. He battled cancer in his final years, a silent fight not widely known to the public. He passed away at his home in Los Angeles, concluding a long and professional career. Robert J. Wilke passed away on March 28, 1989, at the age of 74. The cause of death was cancer. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a stable career primarily in supporting roles not yielding breakthrough income, but leaving a legacy as one of the most memorable villain faces of the Western genre. Vladimir Sokoloff as the Old Man. The Great Tree's early and regrettable passing. Vladimir Sokoloff, born on December 26, 1892, in Moscow, Russian Empire. When he appeared in The Magnificent Seven as the Old Man, a wise elder of the village, he was 67 years old. Sokoloff was a giant in acting with a brilliant career that spanned from the Moscow Art Theater to Hollywood. He was famous for his ability to bring depth and gravitas to supporting roles. Vladimir Sokoloff's career was a cross-continental journey. He had to leave Russia after the revolution, moved to Germany, and finally settled in the USA. His personal tragedy was having to live as a political refugee, constantly having to rebuild his career in different countries and languages. Although he was eventually successful in Hollywood, the cultural disruption and loss left a deep wound. He was a rare old artist among the main cast, respected for his perseverance and profound artistic knowledge. Sadly, his career was abruptly cut short. Not long after The Magnificent Seven was released, he experienced serious health issues. Vladimir Sokoloff passed away on February 15, 1962, at the age of 69. The cause of death was determined to be a stroke. His passing was a great loss to the theater and film community, as he still had many potential roles left to play. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $500,000 USD. This figure reflects a career primarily in supporting roles, but he left behind an invaluable legacy of acting art. Whit Bissell as the Undertaker. Industrious in his craft. Felled by Parkinson's. Whit Bissell, born on October 25, 1909 in New York City, New York, USA. When he played the guest role of the Undertaker in The Magnificent Seven, he was 50 years old. This was a small but important character conveying the fear of the villagers. Bissell was one of Hollywood's most diligent character actors, appearing in hundreds of roles on both film and television. Whit Bissell's career was a long series of non-stop supporting roles spanning decades. His personal tragedy was that he almost always had to play vulnerable, tense authority figures, or people whose authority was shaky. This resulted in him being less remembered by the public by his real name and only as a familiar face. Despite a stable career, he was rarely adequately recognized for his talent and persistent dedication. In his later years, Whit Bissell struggled with Parkinson's disease, a neurological disorder that severely affected his movement and speech. For an actor, losing the ability to control one's body and voice is a painful tragedy. He was forced to retire early due to this devastating disease. Whit Bissell passed away on March 5, 1996, at the age of 86. The cause of death was determined to be complications from Parkinson's disease. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a life dedicated to acting primarily in supporting roles but which provided him with stability. Jorge Martínez de Hoyos, as Hilario. The Mexican star. Felled by cancer. Jorge Martínez de Hoyos, born on September 25, 1920 in Mexico City, Mexico. When he appeared in The Magnificent Seven as Hilario, one of the first villagers to seek help, he was 40 years old. He was a major star of Mexican cinema Mexicano and was known for his ability to portray characters with depth and compassion. Jorge Martínez de Hoyos' career was a bridge between Mexican cinema and Hollywood. He was a talented stage actor, respected in his home country. His personal tragedy was that he frequently had to face stereotypical roles when working in Hollywood, unable to fully express his versatility and talent as he did in Mexican films. His career in the U.S. was always limited by racial and role prejudices, a common tragedy for many international actors at the time. Late in life, Jorge Martínez de Hoyos battled laryngeal cancer. This was an especially painful tragedy for an actor who relied on his voice and verbal expression. This silent battle took away his ability to work in his final years. Jorge Martínez de Hoyos passed away on May 6, 1997 at the age of 76. The cause of death was determined to be laryngeal cancer. Buchholz's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a career primarily successful in Mexico, where actors did not achieve the immense income levels of Hollywood, but he left a profound artistic legacy. John A. Alonzo, cinematographer. The Wizard of Light, who died from cancer. John A. Alonzo, whose birth name was John Arthur Alonzo, was born on June 12, 1934, in Dallas, Texas, USA. When he participated in the filming of The Magnificent Seven, he was very young at the age of 26. Although not appearing on screen, Alonzo was known as a Wizard of Light, who shaped the cinematic beauty of many classic works later on, such as Chinatown. Alonzo's career is a story of breakthrough. He was one of the few Mexican-American cinematographers to achieve massive success in Hollywood, paving the way for the next generation of artists. His personal tragedy was enduring enormous work pressure and discrimination in a predominantly white industry during the early years of his career. He had to prove his talent much more persistently than his colleagues. The highlight was his Oscar nomination for Chinatown. Late in life, John A. Alonzo battled prostate cancer. This was a painful tragedy that weakened his health, preventing him from continuing his beloved work, creating light and shadow. John A. Alonzo passed away on March 13, 2001 at the age of 66. The cause of death was determined to be prostate cancer. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $2 million USD. This figure reflects a long and reputable career, but the role of cinematographer, while important, often does not yield the huge fortunes of film stars. Bing Russell as Robert, the exemplary father who died of cancer. Bing Russell, whose birth name was Neil Oliver Russell, was born on May 5, 1926 in Brattleboro, Vermont, USA. When he appeared in the guest role of Robert Gunsmith in The Magnificent Seven, he was 34 years old. Russell was a familiar face in hundreds of Western films and television shows, often playing likable supporting characters or law enforcement personnel. Bing Russell's career was a quiet dedication to supporting roles. He never became an A-list star, but he was known as an exemplary father and the founder of a Hollywood dynasty. He is the father of famous actor Kurt Russell. His personal tragedy was having to accept the obscurity of his own acting career while his son achieved the pinnacle of fame. However, instead of envy, he found joy and pride in supporting his son's career and running a minor league baseball team, the Portland Mavericks. The biggest tragedy in his life was cancer. He battled cancer in his final years, a silent, unannounced fight. He passed away at his home surrounded by family. Bing Russell passed away on April 8, 2003 at the age of 76. The cause of death was determined to be cancer. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a stable career in supporting roles and investments in other areas like baseball. His legacy is his son's successful career and his love for sports. Val Avery as the Armourer. Strong personality. Felled by cardiovascular disease. Val Avery, whose birth name was Vartan Magarian, was born on December 14, 1924, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. When he appeared in the guest role of the Armourer in The Magnificent Seven, he was 35 years old. He was a familiar character actor, famous for playing aggressive, crude, or strongly personality-driven characters, especially in John Cassavetes' films. Val Avery's career was a silent devotion to art, where he accepted the role of breathing life into supporting characters. His personal tragedy was having to live in the shadow of lead stars, despite his intense acting ability. He was one of many talented actors who never achieved deserved fame. However, his persistence brought a long and stable career respected by his colleagues. In his final years, Val Avery faced serious health issues related to cardiovascular disease. This was the reason he gradually had to withdraw from the screen. For an actor who was always full of energy on set, having his body weaken and no longer able to withstand the work intensity was a private tragedy. Val Avery passed away on December 12, 2009, just 2 days before his 85th birthday. The cause of death was determined to be cardiovascular complications. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a primarily supporting but stable career, providing him with a comfortable life. Rosenda Monteros as Petra, the Latin star, felled by cancer. Rosenda Monteros, whose birth name was Rosenda Monteros O'Farrell, was born on August 31, 1935 in Veracruz, Mexico. When she joined the Magnificent Seven, as Petra, she was only 25 years old. Petra was the beautiful, brave village girl who had a romantic relationship with the young gunslinger Chico Horst Buchholz. Monteros was a rising Latin film star, bringing grace and vitality to the film. Rosenda Monteros's career mainly focused on Mexican cinema and theater. She was a respected actress in her home country. Her personal tragedy was that she had to battle racial prejudice in Hollywood, which prevented her international career from taking off as expected. After the role of Petra, she received many offers, but most were stereotypical roles. She chose to return to Mexico, focusing on theater and art house cinema, where she was treated more fairly. Late in life, Rosenda Monteros battled cancer. She kept this struggle private from the public, a choice that shows her desire to maintain the privacy and dignity of an artist. Rosenda Monteros passed away on December 29, 2018, at the age of 83 in Mexico City. The cause of death was cancer. She was the last surviving member of the Magnificent Seven cast. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was about $1 million USD. This figure reflects a long and successful career in Mexican cinema and theater. The cast of The Magnificent Seven created a cinematic masterpiece, but looking back at their lives, we see a chain of incredible tragedies. From Steve McQueen and Brynner dying young of cancer, Charles Bronson and Robert Vaughn succumbing to Alzheimer's and leukemia, to James Coburn enduring the pain of crippling arthritis. Most of these on-screen heroes paid the price with their health or private lives. Their stories are a reminder that Hollywood glamour cannot shield them from human fragility, illness, or internal struggles. They fought bravely both on the Western screen and in real life, leaving a great artistic legacy that is also filled with personal wounds. After hearing the stories of these tragic heroes, which moment of one of the Magnificent Seven impressed you the most? Which personal story do you find the most heartbreaking? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to bring you deep, sensational, and authentic stories about the dark side of fame.